On board here we have Lewmar winches, and these particular boys here are 2-speed manual with a 1-speed electric motor. And we're going to take these apart today and show you how to service your winches. So it's going to be a messy job. This is just an ordinary cardboard box I'm holding here, but this is going to be a lifesaver to some of you, because one of the problems is winches like ours are normally very much outboard, and if you drop anything, there's a good chance it's going to go straight overboard. One of the reasons we want to do these now while we're still on hard ground is that if we did drop anything, we stand a little bit of a chance of finding it when it hits the dirt just over the other side of the gunnel there. If we did these at sea and you drop anything, it's good night. You're not going to get it back unless you're really lucky. So we're going to show you how to make a little catcher around your winch out of just a bog standard bit of cardboard box. So I'm going to go and get changed, and I'll see you back here in a minute. Well, I hope you can see this all right and can hear me. Somebody over there has just started up with a needle gun, which is going to be a little bit annoying. Right, we've cut the box around. Do not drop, you see. We mustn't drop anything today. And we've cut the box just to fit over the winch. Theory being, if I drop anything, the box is going to catch it. The other things we're going to need before we start, we're going to need some clean rag, a little container to put the bits in as we take all the little paws out, a set of tools, and some cleaner. We're going to use a degreaser, paraffin, white spirit. Wouldn't use petrol. Petrol's just too volatile. But any degreaser that you can find commercially, you'll be able to use. And everybody's trying to get in on the act. They're even running tractors past us now. Okay, let's carry on. First job, these are Lewmar winches, as I've already said. Generally, the winches all run along this line. And at the top, there will be a retaining nut. This doesn't normally get very tight. If you look at it, you can see here it's got little indents for releasing it. And if you do have to use any force, if you can just pass me that hammer and that block of wood. I like to have mine reasonably loose, not too tight, but just gently tap with a block of wood and a small hammer. So we remove this, and already you can see it's quite dirty. If you're not sure at all, obviously you can take photographs as you take things apart. The next thing to come out, if they're self-tailing winches, will be the self-tailing mechanism. And just take a few seconds to note the orientation of that. That should be pointing towards you when you're using the winch. And as you pull that out, you'll see that this little piece has dropped out from underneath. That locates back there. You can see a couple of witness marks that are showing where that little section has been, and you have to make sure it goes back into there. Again, if you're unsure, take photographs. Then, surprisingly, the drum lifts off. And that's it. Inside, you'll see roller bearings and a bearing race. Gear teeth around the outside, and generally this is not too bad at all. At the top we have the rope catcher, which can be removed by releasing these 3 screws. The race actually wants to come out, and that's one of the things that's very important to clean. So we'll put that straight into our pot. Just check there's no other loose bits inside that want to come out, and we'll put that down, and you'll see already getting quite dirty, and I've covered the area. We're going to put everything with a piece of plastic, newspaper, anything will do, just to stop the mess going through. Okay, so now we can see the main tower of the winch. In the bottom we have the 2-speed gear wheels, which line up with these cogs in the main drum. We have another set of roller bearings which need cleaning, and then as we come up to the top, this is the drive unit, and this is normally held in with 2 little paws which I remove there, and again they can go in our little box. Now you should then be able to remove this drive shaft, and again you can see the gear teeth at the bottom. This all looks in pretty good condition. A little bit of dirt around the top here. Once we've removed the shaft, we'll take the lower bearings out, and here, this is one of the reasons why we want to do the service. We can see on this little spacer here little droplets of water, and you can see the grease here has started to emulsify. Be very careful. 3 sections. Make sure they go back right. The lower gears are held in with pins. I'll take this front one out because I think it's easier for you to see. And then there's another one around the back here, which I don't know whether the camera can see. A smaller one. Okay, so once we've got the pins out, we can remove the gears. These might be a little stiff to come out, and again, depending on what sort of winch you've got, it will depend on the gears. And here we can see really horrible. The paws appear to be working okay, but we'll take that part in a minute. We'll try and get the other set of gears out now. Because these are motor driven winches, there is a drive shaft running down through to the motor below the deck, and to get this set of gears out, we actually have to remove the tower on this winch. You may not have to do this if you're not using electrically driven winches. They should just come out. So remove the last screw, give the tower a bit of a knock, pull it up and slide that part of the gear out, and there is the tower base. And so because this has a motor below it, this section is removed and a drive shaft comes through here. So here's our lower gear, and inside you can see these sections where the paws, these little spring-loaded parts here, engage on. And I'll try and get in close with the mic so you can hear this. That's what actually makes the clicking of the winch. So again, we remove those, and we remove this little drive shaft with the little paws, sprung-loaded paws there. Lots of bits here, so be very careful. We have a inner bearing which our pin locates through, and that's in 2 pieces, and we have 4 spring-loaded paws. And if you get any problems with the springs breaking inside, these won't come out and the winch won't operate properly and it will slip. The other thing to look for is significant amount of wear inside the gear, and there's a little bit of wear on this one, but not significant, still serviceable. The only other thing in here that we have to inspect is the rubber seal. There's a rubber seal on this to actually seal the shaft. So now we have the winch completely dismantled. This section normally can't be removed unless you release the circlip on the bottom of the shaft, but it's not a problem. The seal looks good, and we'll just carefully clean that up, get in there with a little brush and take all the dirt out inside, and make sure we clean all the dust and dirt out of here. Right, here we have a pile of goodies. We're just using, as I say, this is a white, rather lively can of ordinary white spirit. Little brush, just clean away to your heart's content. Right, well, that's got everything cleaned, just this little section in here, and I'm just going to finish cleaning that out using a screwdriver. You can see pulling all the old grease and crap out from the bottom. So now all we've got to do is put the whole thing back together, and on this winch it's exactly the reverse procedure. So if you were clever and you took a video of it, you can go and look at the video and play it backwards, and you'll see how to put it back together. We weren't clever enough to do that, so I've got to work it out. We have to put this gear in first on this one because it's the electric winch, and it only goes one way, and there are a couple of signs to tell you. First of all, the actual makeup of the gear is different. It's completely flat face on this end, and it's got a raised section here on this end, and that raised section has a witness mark round it where it's been rotating round, and in here is a corresponding part of a casting that rests on there. And if you put it all back together and it goes the wrong way, then that's because that's round the wrong way. So it is quite easy just to assemble the winch carefully and work out that when that turns that way, when that turns that way, it turns that way, which winds the winch. Don't forget, always, all winches go exactly the same way. They wind clockwise. Doesn't matter which side of the boat it's on, it's always winding clockwise. And lots of people forget that and wind the rope the wrong way because they've gone to the other side of the boat. So always say that to yourself. All winches always wind clockwise. So we know that if we put that back in like that, it'll be right. Obviously we're going to put some grease on it as we put it back. We're just using a general purpose high-load grease. You can go and buy the grease that Lewmar sell you for 6 times the price, but it does exactly the same thing. So a little bit of grease goes in there first of all, and a little bit of grease just in that shaft. And then a little bit of grease, you can't see that, can you, just on the actual gear teeth, and the top again, a little bit of grease in the shaft, a little bit of grease inside here, not too much, doesn't need acres of it. Run it around with your finger. Oh, I'll tell you about the paws on the next one. Okay. Just work it well in. Lovely. Okay, so we have these little paws, and these are the things that often give trouble. Sometimes they break, sometimes the springs break. Mostly it's the springs break. The springs are tiny little things in there. Now I'm going to try and take one of these out now, and if I lose the spring overboard, it's all your fault. Be very careful not to let it go. There. Get rid of the dust and dirt around it on my fingers. There is the spring. I hope the camera's got that. And if the paw comes out, make sure you find the spring. And if you're at all worried about losing stuff when you're putting stuff, things like this together, get a couple of spare springs. And what you do is you enter the paw and then drop the spring. Luckily we have a bag sitting underneath here, so you can pick it up, and I keep being told to lift it up into shot. You have to slide that carefully into that slot. It's difficult to do, it's even harder to do trying to hold it towards the camera, and then gently push it in, making sure you don't let go of it because it will go flying everywhere. You have to tease it into place, and it's much easier to do with actually a screwdriver. Just as you're pushing it, push that last little bit in with the screwdriver down on a hard surface. Very difficult to do trying to hold it up to a camera, and they should spring freely like that. So we'll reassemble this unit, and then we'll put the tower on. And this one can only go in one way. And put some grease in that and just put it all back together. So we take the outer unit, little drop of grease just in there, little drop of grease down there. Smooth it all around. Take the unit and drop it in, making sure that it all clicks. Okay, so that's ready to go in. Okay, just have to lift the larger cog off so we can drop the tower on, and as you can see we've got to insert the gear. Just push the paws in. Now this locates on a little pin. Let's see if I can, just there. Okay. And now I'm also, just to make sure that doesn't go anywhere, I'm going to drop our pin in. Okay. Sounds good. If you put too much grease in, when you put that pin in, it's going to try and fly back out. So if it's doing that, just gentle pressure on it and it will go all the way down, and the grease will push up past it. And that's a sure sign you put a bit too much in. Okay, I'm going to do those 5 bolts up, and then we'll reassemble the rest of it. So we're just securing the, what was there, 5 of them? 4 or 5 retaining bolts, and I'm just going to nip these up. They don't need to be super tight, but they do need to be tight enough not to slacken off. I don't like to put thread lock on them because they're a big bolt with just a screwdriver head, and even using a very low strength thread lock, you could run into trouble getting them off if you need to service a winch in a hurry because a paws got jammed or something. So I must admit, I do like these little ratchet screwdrivers working off of a little 1/4 inch drive. Very useful. There we go. Needs to be tight. So now we can put our other gear wheel in. Now, depending on your winch, of course, you might not have as many gears in it. If it's a single speed winch, you won't have quite so many of these. If it's a 2-speed electric winch, you're going to have even more gears. A little bit more grease on the teeth. A little bit of grease on the base. And then this works its way in from the back, and then we drop the little pin in, and just make sure it's all fully seated, and just a little touch more grease, a little drop of grease on this one. Okay, now we want the drive unit. Okay, so this bit, a little bit of grease, on the shaft so that it's on the bottom there. Just gently turn it as you go, pulling that grease down with you. As you can see, I get near the bottom there and it engages. Let me just check that with a winch handle. Okay, 1 speed. You can see this is the drive wheel for the drum, and you can see it going fairly slow speed. I pull the winch back, it goes much faster. And check the electric. Okay. You do have to be a bit careful with the electric winches. You really do need them switched on so you can press the button to make them work. In my case, the button is right here, and it's very difficult for me to press the button and be doing anything on the winch without seeing it, and so it's relatively safe. But if the winch button is somewhere else, or there's 2 winch buttons, just make sure nothing can touch the other winch button. You really do need the winch live to make sure you can work it round. But be careful. Okay, we're nearly there. We've got the tower fixed in, we've got all the gears back, we've checked all the paws and all this lot is greased, and we've got the drive shaft operating and making sure it goes right. So now we've just got to assemble the bearing assembly and drop the winch cover on. So if you remember, we had a little plastic spacer first of all, and then we had a roller bearing. These 2 roller bearings exactly the same, no difference with them. It doesn't matter which way up they go, which way round they go. You can argue that there might be a little bit more wear in one than the other. It's not going to be noticeable. Unless your winch is almost worn out, then you need to replace the bearings and probably replace the drum as well, and the tower. A little bit of grease on the inside, the distance spacer, and the second bearing. Okay, I pull this lot off and bring it around the bearing. Again, not too much grease, and try and keep it just on the bearing. Okay, so now if you're happy, you've got everything back, all your bolts are tight, your pins are in, spacers in, this plastic spacer at the bottom here just to lift the bearing up, stop it going in too far, is all okay. Then we can just put the lock in here and drop the top on. And the lock, these two little brass quadrants, and they just drop in here and here, go in like that. And I'm just going to put a little drop of grease, use what's on the outside of the tube, on each one. You notice I just had to pull the centre drive shaft up very slightly to enable me to engage it in the slot. Right. Again, these are the bits you drop overboard. Okay, we now have the drum nice and clean inside. And just put a little drop of grease around the bottom gear, not too much, spread it around a little bit, that's fine. And then gently drop the drum over and turn it until it locks. Double check it again, slow speed, fast speed. Right, we're nearly there. Rotate the drum until the spacer's pointing at you, and don't forget it says top on it. Then you want your self-tailing paw to go in. It needs to engage in that spacer and in the castellations in the top. Okay, happy with that. A little bit fiddly just getting those castellations in to the locking pins. They actually hold the locking pins in the shaft and stop the shaft lifting out. And then it's the top nut. Just a little bit of, very tiny little bit of grease on the O-ring that is there, and just a little bit on that thread to stop it locking up. Just spin that down and a little piece of wood and a hammer, just tap it up tight. Lovely. Sounds good. Fast speed, slow speed. Fast speed, slow speed. Yep. And that's it. That's all there is to servicing your winches. We've got 3 more to do now. See you all again soon.